Okay, so let's see. What was my low, my high, my act of kindness? I'd say my low is there was a phone call I was kind of hoping would go my way, but it fell through. No big deal yet, but I still kind of wish it didn't happen that way. My high, if you couldn't already tell, I got myself a new do. I look all fancy now with my haircut and all short hair and whatever. Yep, you know the state of my being addressed is coming on the horizon when I get myself a haircut. I tell you what though, going outside is going to be a real hassle. I'll just be like, because like my hair is so short we can almost see my scalp. And so when I go outside, especially with as cold as it is outside, the cold wind's going to like blow right over my scalp and be like, woo! It got me good. And my act of kindness was, I got to talk to my dad about something really important I kind of wanted to do today. I mean, at least it was something that normally I always forget to ask, but this time I did, so I'll count that. So anyway, good morning and happy hump day, everyone. And on this hump day, considering I just revealed that the newest Hot Ones guest this week will be Ed Helms, I think this calls for a Movies of My Youth video. Because let's be honest, since Ed Helms is going to be on Hot Ones tomorrow, you know full well at least one question will be dedicated to the Hangover Trilogy. And since I have seen the Hangover Trilogy, I think I can talk about my experiences from it all and what I think of the trilogy as a whole, because this is definitely a trilogy that sadly went from being really, one could even say great, to pretty much ending on a whimper. I'll get to that in a minute. So, the first Hangover movie came out in 2009. Wait, no, it was 2000. Yeah, it was 2009 when I saw the first Hangover movie. And actually, was it 2009? Yeah, it was 2009. Because I remember I just had finished Trinity Palling when I first saw it. Now, this movie was somewhat an enigma for me, because I heard so many people like talk about The Hangover and like this Hangover is gonna be great. It looks like it's gonna be fun, whatever. But I'll be honest, I don't remember seeing any commercials for that movie whatsoever. But I heard a bunch of hype about it. So it was that Friday night, like May, June of 2009, when my father, my brother, and I went to see The Hangover. Now, full disclosure, to my recollection, this was the first time that I can recall that, because here's the thing, I had been in a quote-unquote packed house before, but this is the first time I can guarantee you it was almost completely sold out. That's how big this movie was. In fact, my father, my brother, and I kind of struggled to find some seats. And so the trailers go up and then the movie begins. And right off the bat, it pretty much takes place on the day of a wedding, where they're looking for the groom. And it turns out the bride gets a phone call from one of the groomsmen, and the groomsman, named Doug, is nowhere to be found due to the bachelor party in Vegas that they were at. And right away you get what the premise of the movie is. Basically, this groomsman, named Doug, because he's played by Doug, because he just goes by Doug. I'll just call him Doug. Doug. Anyway, he and a few of his groomsmen, Stu, played by Bradley Cooper, One of them is played by Ed Helms, who's going to be a Helms tomorrow. That's why I'm talking about these movies. And Zach Galifianakis. And they're going to take him to Las Vegas for a bachelor party. Cool, right? Well, it turns out they go to the Caesar for their hotel room. They somehow find a way to get on the rooftop. And they do like a cheers and get ready to start off the night. Let's go. Let's dance the night away. All that stuff, right? So the next day happens and they get back to the hotel room, which they pretty much got like the best suite in the Caesar. And it's not only completely destroyed, but the amount of atrocities seen in this hotel room are absolutely crazy. I mean, there's a chicken walking around. There was a blow-up doll that just happened to be there. There was a tiger in the bathroom. A real-life tiger. Like that. A real tiger. So, the premise of this movie was, these friends go out for a bachelor party the night before, having no idea what they did, or how everything got the way it was. And so the next day, while trying to find Doug, everything that happened the night before started rearing its ugly head. And it was one of the best experiences I ever had in a movie theater. I mean, there were scenes where I was laughing my head off. There were scenes where I was laughing my head off, mostly because other people in the audiences, the way they were laughing their heads off, so that made me laugh my head off. Like, it all goes crazy from there. And needless to say, the breakout star of these movies was Ken Jeong, who was on Hot Ones previously, and was a guy named Mr. Leslie Chow. Now, Ken Jeong is already of Asian descent, so for the sake of this movie, they really wanted him to play like a sort of stereotypical sounding Asian character. I'm not going to try and recreate that here because I'm pretty sure that would come across as racist. But you can get the idea where this is going. And needless to say, Mr. Chow got Ken Jeong a lot of roles. Some were, you know, good. Others were just him playing Mr. Chow again, which got kind of annoying. Seriously, if you want to see Ken Jeong in a movie that's actually like, where he's not being Mr. Chow, just watch the movie Knocked Up, which is another movie I'll probably get into at some point. But with that said, eventually they find Doug, and they get to the wedding, with a few crazy shenanigans going along the way. And then apparently it was so popular, they came out with a sequel, called, obviously, The Hangover 2. Now, I may have told this story before, but here goes. Eventually, I did see Hangover 2 in the theater, but the opening weekend it came out, another movie I was vastly looking forward to premiered, which was another sequel called Kung Fu Panda 2. Considering that less people in my family are going to be interested in seeing Kung Fu Panda 2 over Hangover 2, I went to go see Kung Fu Panda 2 by myself. And when I say by myself, I mean quite literally. I went to the midnight showing of Kung Fu Panda 2. That was also going on at the same time as the midnight showing for Hangover 2. The entirety of Hangover 2 was completely and utterly packed. The audience for Kung Fu Panda 2 was a mere one person. That was me. Yes, I was the only person who went to go see Kung Fu Panda 2 in the town of Horseheads the night it premiered. Funny, huh? And it's even funnier when I tell you that when I did see Hangover 2, it confirmed what a lot of people were already saying about it. Hangover 2 was essentially Hangover 1 again, just not quite as good. Meanwhile, Kung Fu Panda 2 was not only nominated for an Oscar for Best Animated Picture, but to this day, a lot of people will tell you that there are scenes in that movie that legitimately brought about good emotional crime. Needless to say, Kung Fu Panda 2 was the better movie. I will probably have to talk about the Kung Fu Panda trilogy at some point as well, won't I? But let's get into the main topic of discussion. So, yes, well, Hangover 2 was Hangover 1, only, not as good. It was still funny. I still liked it a lot. And I can tell you, if you're a fan of the first one, go watch the second one. Which brings me to the third Hangover movie, Hangover 3. Now, this movie came out the year I graduated from Gettysburg College. In fact, it might have been one of the first movies I ever saw after I graduated from college. Now, one constant from these Hangover movies that they like to use, well, actually two, was how over-the-top Ken Jeong was as Mr. Chow. And just how crazy and kind of creepy Zach Galifianakis' character Alan was. And it started losing its charm in the second movie when they kind of went a little too much of that. In this third movie, they went so completely overboard. It's actually not surprising why Hangover 3 got critically panned reviews. Now, I want to make one thing abundantly clear. I don't think Hangover 3 is the worst movie ever made. It's not even close to being the worst movie I've ever seen. Not even close. But I really have no aspirations of ever really watching it ever again. Really, I watched it for the sake of completing the trilogy. Which I have done, which I've obviously done, hence why I'm talking about these movies. And it's a real shame, too, because the premise of the third movie actually is promising. Because all the elements from the first two Hangover movies legitimately rear their ugly head long-term in this one. And they could have really done so much more with that. But in the end, it's mostly Ken Jeong overplaying it as Mr. Chow, and Zach Galifianakis being crazy Zach Galifianakis. And not in the funny crazy either. It's a real shame, too, because if nothing else, Ed Helms and Bradley Cooper definitely were the straight men in these movies. And, I mean, if these movies were a way of like, okay, Bradley Cooper and Ed Helms are great, we should probably watch them more, it worked on me. I mean, Ed Helms got roles on stuff like The Office and some voice animated movies like in Captain Underpants. Meanwhile, Bradley Cooper, what hasn't Bradley Cooper done? Oscar-nominated actor, Rocket Raccoon in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, needless to say, Bradley Cooper's the man. And it's probably going to come across that I'm going to say something bad about Ken Jeong and Zach Galifianakis. No, those guys are cool too. I mean, there's a reason why Ken Jeong is as popular as he is. I mean, he's on The Masked Singer, for God's sakes. He's awesome. And as for Zach Galifianakis, I'm glad that, like, he's sort of gotten that idea that, okay, the way he got famous, especially playing Alan in those Hangover movies, is kind of ruining his reputation a little bit. So pick a little more roles that are on the subtle side. Like, I think What's Wrong with Bob, I think he's in. I haven't seen that, but I've heard about it. I think he's trying to embrace that part. Because everyone can tell you that comedy works if you know what you're doing. And the comedy in these movies even in Hangover 3, there's definitely at least something funny in there. Even if, like, you know, it doesn't really garner the laugh. So, do I recommend these movies? Well, if you see, well, obviously the first one, yes, go and see, absolutely. Go definitely see Hangover 1. Hangover 2, you're going to get a lot of what you saw in Hangover 1, but it shouldn't really bother you if you are going in with relatively low expectations. So I would say go for it if you really were a fan of the first one. I'm not entirely sure if I feel comfortable recommending the third one. I mean, if you really, really, really want to see how it all ends, then sure, why not? It certainly won't kill you. And I mean, Hangover 3 is probably the kind of movie that, like, if it was maybe 10 years earlier, well, actually, if it was 10 years earlier, I wouldn't have been allowed to see it because it was rated R. But if it came out earlier, I probably would have been in that mindset, like, this is so stupid, but I kind of like it. Here, again, if you really want to see how this trilogy ends, because it does sort of end on a happy note. I mean, the characters all distance themselves away from Ken Jeong's character, Mr. Chow. Alan, Zach Galifianakis' character, does get married. So, that's sort of a happy ending, I guess. And if you really are feeling optimistic about good parts like that, then sure, you can go watch it, why not? But that's just me. Like, favorite, share, hit the subscribe button, follow me on the social platform, YouTube. I'm very home this video for all of you guys watching. Joe for Hopefully you have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. And remember, if you guys want to talk to me, we'll be here to lend, and always have your back. Take care and make good choices. Have a nice day.